joining us on this Saturday. Um, it's my pleasure to have you, and I know a lot of our attendees are going to get a lot out of this session. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce you all. So first we have Lara. So Lara is a gardener, educator, and artist. She specializes in rooftop gardens that produce food. Gardening has always been part of her family, from her parents to her Danish, British, Russian, and Italian ancestors. Laura has 15 years of experience teaching gardening skills and visual art to community groups. Since 2003, Laura has been dedicated to teaching and learning about growing food in small spaces. She especially values sharing information about growing healthy food with those living in high-rise areas and inner cities. Laura is the author of 2 books, An Illustrated Guide to Growing Food on Your Balcony and Grow Without a Garden, 101 Plants for Containers. Our next panelist is Melody. Melody has a background in the arts and has worked in community arts for many years. Needing a change a few years ago, she discovered farming and fell in love with working with the land. She loves being part of the team at Flemington Park Ministry and will be going to her 3rd season with FPM's Food Justice Project, an urban farm in Toronto called the Common Table Farm. She's particularly interested in learning about seed saving and creating greater biodiversity on the farm. Our next panelist is Kevin. Kevin comes from a culinary, community work, and arts background. Kevin has decided to focus his interests in urban agriculture. Kevin is an urban farmer working as a farmer at one of FoodShare's urban farms. Last year, he started a microflower herb farm, Earth Known Farm, with his colleague and friend Ekau Stone, as a passion project under FoodShare's Youth Grown program, which is an incubator project for youth to grow on their plots. Together, they've been experimenting with flowers and bouquet making. So I thank all 3 of you for your time today, and I look forward to any and all insights that you can provide for us. So I'm just going to jump right into asking you guys some questions. And we'll just go around. I realize when people say go around, you're not seeing my screen. So, so maybe I'll just name the person and we'll just go from there. So the first question, we'll start this time with Kevin going clockwise. And then we'll go to Melody and then Lara. So the first question for all 3 of you is, and I guess your bios sort of already cover this, but if you just want to add a little bit more that your bios didn't cover to the first question, which is, how did you get into urban agriculture and why do you find it crucial or critical, if you do?
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me. So I got into urban agriculture after just being in the hospitality industry for quite some time. Just working at a restaurant that was working closely with fresh vegetables and working with local farmers, I realized like that was something I wanted to explore a lot. And I was really curious about where the food was growing. So I really started to research about farmers and started volunteering at food organizations around the city, especially in the city because I didn't have that transportation that I wanted to go to a rural farm. So urban farming, in a way, it helps a lot of people to connect with food that does not have that transportation. So when you're limited with not having a car, urban agriculture is a good way to learn food. And that was kind of like the part of me that made it really interested because, as a youth and as someone who doesn't really have that transportation, it was a good way to explore that. And that kind of, started everything where it's just like, okay, like there are urban farms that actually exist and people are actually interested in growing food in the city because of like how accessible it can be, right? Like you can just walk 10 minutes, 15 minutes to just go and then, you have fresh food and you can just harvest food right away. And so that started out. So I went to community work for school as well because urban agriculture is about building community. It's about, working with a range of people, and, it's connecting with others through growing food. So urban agriculture is food justice in a lot of ways. What was the other question? Sorry, I'm like rambling off, but what was the
No,
other
well,
part of it?
you sort of tied on it in terms of, I asked why it's crucial for you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so it's crucial because you get to work in an accessible setting where it's like you don't have to drive an hour away to know where your food comes from, rather than, it's just 15 minutes. So I think that's one of the crucial part. And also with youths and being interested, it's also like that as well. People are mainly youths are in the city, and they can get really curious about food, and urban agriculture was something that I was into. So that's really crucial for me, that it's really accessible for everybody to have. And yeah, that's my question.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And Melody, same question.
Chimu, it's nice to meet you, Laura and Kevin, and thank you for inviting me. I get kind of nervous when it's an expert panel because I don't feel like an expert at all. I'm a learner, like I think a lot of the people who are joining this workshop. But I just so appreciate Isaac, his talk, and how he just rooted his work at Evergreen and elsewhere in his family history and his story of his people. And I didn't really provide that in my bio, so I just wanted, I don't know if it's going to show up, but I got my mom to just send me a little picture of myself when I was very little, and that's our family backyard, where my mom would grow fuzzy melon, which is an Asian type of squash. Yeah, I feel like that's part of my journey too in growing. But I didn't really, I wasn't into gardening very much for a lot of my life. I think for me, the journey into farming is really one of healing. I had been doing community arts and a nonprofit sector for over 10 years. And, it's a rich experience, but I did go through an experience of burnout, just giving a lot of myself and not learning how to replenish within that work. So I did reach a point where I needed to make a change and step away from that work. And I didn't know what to do next, but I knew that I needed to be spending time with the earth. So I had this opportunity to go and intern at a small permaculture farm out in the country. And I did that for 6 months. And I knew that it would be good for me, but I didn't realize just how transformative it would be to be out on the land day after day, like having that time to see the trees and the plants and all the different creatures in that ecosystem change over time, and to grow my own food, like actually be involved in that process in a much more intentional way. And I came out of that like having fallen in love with farming. So when I came back to the city, I just was like, how do I keep farming? And I'm just very fortunate to find a job at Flemington Park Ministry, joining their team with the Common Table Farm. And that's given me the chance to, keep learning and keep farming in the city, which, even though there are more and more opportunities now, it is still hard, to farm in the city. So I'm very grateful for that. And in terms of why urban farming is crucial, a lot of reasons, but I think maybe the one that I'll touch on is, I think for, someone like me who grew up in the city, it's we're very disconnected in the urban setting, unless you're quite mindful, like you're just so disconnected from natural systems and from how we get our food. And I think urban farming gives that visibility and that opportunity for people to have a hands-on experience of growing. And to me, that's a chance to become more whole and be more human, where we can learn to have that deeper gratitude and appreciation for the earth and what it gives us, how it sustains us, as well as for those who grow food for us. Yeah, I think just connecting back to what Isaac spoke about, like, it's such a different experience when you tend to plant, all that time it takes, and then one day you get to eat that tomato or whatever it is. That experience is a relationship. It's very different than when you've just bought it off, from the grocery store. So I think it's about those connections that we get to begin to make again with the earth, and what Kevin was saying as well, with each other and community. Like, often urban farming is in a community context. So we're working together, we're learning how to do this together. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Melody. So we'll ask the same question to Laura, please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I relate to really some of the things that you've both just said. The kind of big thinking behind how I got into growing food in the city was really being pretty terrified about the food system as it is, and genetically modified foods and pesticides and all of the bad news that I won't go into, but thinking about what can we do to counteract that, even if it is on a small scale. And also kind of the concept of transforming urban space. So this was, again, very just thoughts in my mind. It wasn't something I had done yet when I was having these thoughts and writing about it and thinking about how kind of what Melody you're saying about being disconnected in the city and often not feeling like we have any involvement or engagement in the spaces around us, and seeing some really inspiring projects of people growing food in community. And I think we didn't really have this term urban ag earlier on. We called it community gardening, and community being the really important part of that. So again, not to be too repetitive, but the working together, learning from each other, that's one of my favorite things. It's one of the reasons I miss our in-person Seedy Saturday so much. And I think, yeah, again, to relate to that comment about, like, are we experts? Who are we to be experts? I think even though, like, I have this ton of knowledge, I'm always hesitant to be in that position because there are so many ways of gardening, and that's one of the beautiful things about doing it in community. And I think when we look at the bigger idea of how to kind of change the industrial food system, we need to be not just doing it all individually. And again, yeah, what Kevin said about being accessible, I think is a really key part.
Thank you very much, Laura. And I'm just going to introduce our fourth panelist, Charles Cagpul. And Charles is an Anishinaabe chef who owns Charter Foods and runs Gitikanas, which means little farm in Ojibwe, at Flemo Farm, and it's an urban farm in North York. Charles' plots consist of indigenous crops that he either sells at Flemo Farm's weekly market or uses for his catering and hot sauce business. Charles aims to promote Indigenous food sovereignty by primarily growing Indigenous foods and using traditional harvesting methods that have been passed down from generation to generation. He hopes to continue educating the community around him, both at the farm and at the local markets where he sells his harvest. And Charles, thank you for joining us. And I'll be asking you the same question that I asked the three other panelists, which is, how did you get into urban agriculture, and why do you find it crucial or critical, if in fact you do?
Hi, thank you for having me today. I apologize that I was a couple minutes late. Of course, when I turned on my computer, it needed to do a bunch of updates first and threw my timing off. And I'm sitting there and going, come on, hurry up. So as the owner of Charter Foods, first step, I'm a chef. So I've always been involved with foods and fresh foods, and a lot of purchasing directly from farmers directly. So calling myself a farm to table chef, and dealing with fresh produce and the importance of it and talking about it. But as an Indigenous person, I also teach about pre-colonial foods and talk about what we used to eat. And I always get that question and think it's a ridiculous question. Well, what did Native people eat before colonization? And I think, what a stupid question. Do you think we were just waiting around for a ocean liner to come with a bunch of food from across the ocean? We ate what now is trendy. What's trendy in the world of food today? Eating local, eating what's growing around you. And that's what Indigenous people did. I mean, you hunted what was around you, you fished what was around you from the lakes and streams around you. You grew your own food and you foraged. And I think that, having those connections with the land that's around you is most important. How did I get involved with the actual farming as opposed to just dealing with farmers? My wife was on Twitter one night and saw that Flemington Farm was looking for an Indigenous farmer. And she said, "What do you think about that?" And I said, "Oh, that's really cool. What do you think about that? Like, what do you think?" And I said, "That's really cool." And she asked me a third time and she said, "Well, are you going to apply?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know anything about farming itself. I know about food." Anyways, it took a lot of coursing for me to apply. And I did. And I was accepted as the Indigenous farmer of Flemo Farm as one of the community farmers. And best decision I ever made was to actually do it, to actually watch from a seed, to be able to see that sprout, to see that plant start to flower, to see that fruit, vegetable start to grow, and pick it and then take that home and make a dinner out of that. I didn't call myself a farmer until the end of the first season. I said, well, I'm farming, but I wouldn't call myself a farmer until the full season was completed. You can't call yourself a marathon runner if you only run 3/4 of the marathon. So I'd have to get the whole season in. I can now call myself a farmer, a new farmer. Still lots to learn, but I can't believe how much I learned in 1 year at Flemo Farm. And, Gitagonis, I'm bringing back, not bringing back, I'm starting to reintroduce to more people more varieties of different squashes and different beans and the stories of where they came from. I had 12 different varieties of beans on my plot last year, and the stories that go along with them are need to be told. So yeah, it's just incredible to watch that food. So now I don't call myself a farm to table chef. I'm a farmer to table, which is the next step up.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll move on to the next question, and this time we'll be going Melody to Kevin to Lara, and Charles, you'll be last again this time. And so the next question that I'm asking you is, what are the 3 most important things to think about when you first start growing? And this can be if you're doing it in the balcony, in a small container, or in the ground. So what are 3? So we'll start with, who did I say? I think I said Melody. I have a short, bad memory.
It's kind of hard to pick 3 things. But I think